Okay. Welcome to this special meeting of the Hartford Select Board. As you know, former Select Board member Brandon Smith has relocated out of town and resigned his seat on the Select Board. Per the town charter, which was voted on by the residents and the town was approved by the state, the remaining 6 members of the board have decided to make an appointment of a town resident to fill this vacancy until town meeting day in early March. This appointee, of course, as well as the other applicants, are encouraged to face the voters and run for a term at that time if they choose to do so. We are pleased to have received applications from 5 town residents, one of which, that of Michael Eigenbrode, has been withdrawn at the applicant's request. Each of the remaining 4 applicants will be interviewed tonight here in open session. Each candidate has been given the first 2 questions to be posed by the Select Board in advance. Following these questions and answers, Select Board members will pose additional questions as they see fit. The Select Board has allotted a total of 15 minutes for each interview. Once the interviews are completed, the Select Board will convene in executive session to discuss and evaluate the candidates and select one to serve on the board. A decision will be announced tonight in open session, after which the board will complete the balance of tonight's agenda. And by the way, tonight's appointee may not participate on the Select Board until they have sworn the oath of office of the town clerk. Thank you. Okay, so we are ready to begin. And Lannie, I believe you are our first applicant. And after you introduce yourself, if you want to start by talking either of the questions that first, the ones that you were given in advance, that'd be great.
Lannie Collins, live outside Queechee.
Lannie, we do have a chair and table if you'd like to use the microphone here.
I mean, I don't care.
Would you mind? I think that microphone is better. We get a lot of complaints about that one.
Okay.
Thank you, Lannie.
Madam Chair, can I have a point of clarification? Do
Yes.
I begin the timer at this point?
Begin the timer when Lannie starts talking.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
So, Lannie Collins, just outside of Queechee. So, to address the first question, priorities be in this fall's budget process. I think it's a misnomer in a way to ask the question because it almost leads me to believe that the priorities in the past boards have been wrong. And past boards' priorities have been in line with what the towns needed at that time. So I think my priorities, if I were selected for this position, would be to talk with the department heads, and I would like to see the presentation of the budget in a different form. I'd like to see the presentation of the budget of what is needed to currently maintain the status quo of the town. That way we could know that we were currently able to meet the standards that we're meeting today. And then in separate items, I'd like to have the budget heads, the department heads bring forward the idea of this is what we'd like to add to the budget. This will give the voters a better idea when we present this budget of what is actually needed to run the town on a daily basis. And it will also give them an idea of what the department heads are looking for and also what that need from the department head will do for benefit of the town of Hartford residents. That would be my priorities. In terms of a department, which I'd like to see more emphasis placed on is public works. We heard from the department head just recently about all the roads and the infrastructure needs of the town of Hartford. There are many that still are working out from all the storms that we've had in the past. We need to get that stuff taken care of. I heard from this deputy director of public works that he'd like to have a 5-man crew to be able to do projects within the town that he can't do because of lack of staffing. That would be something worthwhile to take on as well. There's a lot of projects, culverts, ditching, which we haven't done ditching in this town for ages, that he could do with a 5-man crew. I would love to see us be able to finance that and be able to get some of these projects done in-house versus having to farm everything out and wait considerable amount of time for local contractors, which is an enormous amount of time we end up waiting. But again, the public works is an area that with such a large budget that we always in the past have taken money from in order to have a a lesser impact on the taxpayers. And in a way, Public Works has been neglected because of this. We need to make an emphasis on our roads, our sidewalks, our streets. That would be my highest priority item for that. I've always been a strong advocate for Public Works and infrastructure needs. Answer the next question, how would I get more involved with the citizens being involved? One thing that I advocated for a long time ago, before I was even on the board, is having listening sessions and select board in different villages in the town. I'd like to see that happen again. Go to the different towns, go to the different villages, have the meetings, the regular select board meetings at those villages. Yes, it makes it a little more difficult for JAM or public broadcasting, but it gives us a chance to get out of the village, not only for people to see the select board members to see different areas of the town, but also for the people to be able to come into their own community, neighborhood, and talk to people one-on-one. The other thing I'd like to be able to do, which I think I've been thinking a lot about this, is in order to engage public more in decision-making, is have select board members meet one or two every other week. Generally, it'd be good to have two people meet like every other week and have a listening session for the public to be able to come in and just talk about what they feel is needed within the town of Hartford. That gets the ideas to the select board, and it gets the decision-making process, not so much them being involved in the decision-making process, but it gets them involved with understanding that the select board cares about what they have and what the select board, what the decisions that they would base upon their constituents in the town of Hartford. That I think it's really important to have. The police department did a great job with Coffee with a Cop. I think the same concept of coffee with select board members. As I said, get two people on a rotating basis every other week or twice a month to come in and sit down with residents is an ideal way to get the word out and to get more input from them. I also, when I was on the board, I put across the idea, and it's been implemented, of putting out mailings with the billing cycle for the taxes, which I think is good. That's a good approach to take. I think it should be more often. We should do one every quarter. We should do a quarterly mailing, telling what the board is doing and asking at each one of those times for input from the residents of town of Hartford, what they would like to see the select board focus more on. Now, those are my priorities, and that's what I would have for getting more involvement from the citizens. Also, I think it's really important that anytime there's a public event within the town, that there's select board presentation. It's great to have, it was great to see people out to the ribbon cutting for Station 2. It'd be great to have at the block party, to have a table set up, have a couple of select board members there, just get input from people. Anytime there's a gathering of large crowds in the town of Hartford, there's a big contingent of select board members, not enough to have a quorum, but enough so you get the face of the select board out there so that people understand what's happening in the town.
Okay, thank you, Lannie. Now questions from the board. I'm going to start with Ashley, if that's okay. You have a question to direct to Lannie?
I don't think I do. That was really helpful, your answers to the other questions. And I know you've served on the board in the past. So yeah, I appreciate you applying.
One of the things that I'd like to mention is that in my application, you guys may think it's strange because I've been advocating very much against the town involved in, and I still advocate against the town being involved with governing, with taking over private landlords' rental fees. I would love to see the town at this point get involved with housing. We as a town need to attack the problem of homelessness head on, not the way we've been going about it. We need to get a piece of property. We need to build a structure and house it with the people that can't find housing in the town of Hartford. I would much rather, and I'm sure people that I've talked to in the community would much rather see the town of Hartford commit taxpayer dollars to lower income housing or to combat the homelessness and the drug use that we have in town, because that, talking to police officers and the social workers, the underlying root of the problem we have is homelessness, all right? They'd much rather see taxpayer dollars be used on building a housing, for lack of a better word, project for the community members that need it, rather than spending money on the downtown area like the Coolidge Block. There's millions of dollars out there that we're looking to spend, and we need to spend them in the right direction that's going to help cure some of the problems that we're having. And that means housing for this homelessness, not high-end housing and luxury boutiques, shops that will be in our downtown area. Not that that's not an area that we could focus on in the future, but it's not what the town needs now. We need to focus on what we as a town need now, and we need to combat the housing problem that we have, and the homelessness project we have, and the drug problem, and it's all revolved around one.
Okay, thank you, Lannie. Mike, do you have a question for Lannie?
Yeah, hi, Lannie. Can you identify what you consider to be the three biggest issues now facing Hartford? I know you just talked.
Homelessness and drug use is the biggest thing that we're facing. That's the two issues right there. The other issue that we're facing right now is a lack of, I think, transparency on what we're presenting for the taxpayers to the town of Hartford. Eric had a great idea of using graphs and such to present the budget. We need to do a better job, and that's why I said we need to do a better job of presenting the budget in an area of, this is what we're getting, this is what you're getting for what you're paying. But we'd like to add this little bit, and you will, because of this adding, you will get this back. So that's where I see the need, the problems that we're having. And communication is still, I believe, an issue for people that aren't media savvy, that don't get the Hartford newsletter by email. There's a lot of people out there, especially the older generation, that still rely on newspapers. And they're not getting the information out there in newspapers. They're getting electronic, and people get electronically, that can get it, but there's still a large group of people that aren't getting that. So,
Okay,
Thank you.
Ida, do you have a question for Lannie?
Sure, I'll ask a question. Hi, Lannie. Lannie, I was curious what role you hope to play on the select board, and would that be like a similar, any differences from the role you played in terms of a member of the board and how you contribute?
I'm not sure what there are when we talk about roles for the select board. You would have roles of a chair, vice chair. I'm not sure what you mean.
Not a formal role like that, but in terms of like your contribution and how you plan to work with the board as a whole.
One of the things that we as a board previously spent a lot of time on is identifying the strengths of individual board members. And we need to focus on those strengths. And that's the kind of thing that the strengths that I have, I mean, I have a project management degree and operations and project management degree. Those are the kind of things that we should be able to tap into the individual members of the board. When I did one of the ideas I had is using data-driven decision-making. And that's one of the things that I think this board could benefit from as well. And that's one of the things that I used to come up with a decision on something we're doing as a board. I would like to see myself in that role of gathering the data and coming up with a data decision-making matrix to be able to guide the board to the future as well. It worked really well that time we did use it.
Thank you.
Okay, Miranda, do you have a question for Lannie?
No, I really appreciated your last point that you made about the data-driven decision-making matrix. It's really interesting.
It's the best way to guide decision-making is with factual data, because emotions get in the way a lot of times of making decisions. And if you have the data to help you make those decisions, it doesn't take the emotion out of it, but it lets you make it based on facts, which is important.
Eric, do you have a question for Lannie?
I do, but I think we're pretty close to out of time. We've got 3 minutes left. All right, I just saw the 20 seconds. So, thanks for putting your hat in the ring again, Lannie. I guess my question, I'll start by putting a little context around it. I think it's relatively easy to be the nay vote. It's relatively easy to pitch ideas. Takes a lot more work and conviction and skill to make proposals and counter proposals and build support for them. So can you give us, during the 4 years or however long you spent on the board, I'm not quite clear on that in the past, specific instances of when you played a significant role as the coalition builder as the compromiser, as the collaborator, building support for ideas.
I was never, in many of the situations we've had in the board, there's always been, if you're looking at the scales of board, I've always been more of a conservative on the board. And I still have those conservative ideals, and I still have the ideals of infrastructure first. And I would like to think that I brought a different perspective to open the conversation. And that's where I think I would be in the future. You need someone with, I think, long-term history as well as an opposing view in order to have your minds open to different possibilities that are out there. If everybody on the board says yes, it's like the 10th man aspect. You should have always one person advocating against something and trying to get the ideas out there so that you can look at things from a different perspective. If you can only look at the perspective of yes, that doesn't give you an idea of why people might say no. And that's where I think my value of the board is, in being able to have a different perspective of a lot of the people that have lived in the town a long time and don't understand. And that's where I think I'm good for this board.
Thank you.
Because you need to have varied opinions across the board.
Okay, and I have a question. I don't know if there's very much time for it, and it kind of segues on what you've said before and what you've just stated about someone not going with the rest of the voting. While members are individual residents who represent diverse experiences in the town, it's still important to work cooperatively with others. Please convince me how you would do that.
How would I work cooperatively? Well, you have to understand that this is a board of 7 people, okay? And you have to understand as well, anybody that comes on this board, is that being a board of 7 people, majority rules on the board. And whatever decision's been made, I may not have liked them, but I accepted them. And that's what you have to be able to do, is accept the decision that's made. May not like the decision, but it's made. It's majority rule. That's what it's all. And I have not agreed with the majority rule in the past, but I have to accept it. I guess agreeing and accepting are 2 different things. So.
Okay, thank you, Lannie. Appreciate that. All right. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lannie. Mary,
Yes.
one thing that I noticed on the feed is that you could only see like Lannie's face. You couldn't, so I almost wonder if we're able to scooch this table back a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe just so that the chair in the first row there is the chair they sit in.
Okay, but this might be okay or.
Yeah, I could see him, but and he's tall, so.
Okay. Chris, yes.
Oh, we did get an email, not just about the visuals of the candidate, but since we gave 2 questions in advance to every candidate, the person who's watching would like us to just restate the question
Okay.
so that they know what
the question is. Okay, sure. That's great. So we will start next with Kristen. How are you today? Well, thank you. So Kristen, now you've had someone to go ahead of you. You kind of know the way it's going to go. For the person who emailed us and they wanted to know what the questions were, the first question is, what would your priorities be in this fall's budget process? And the second question would be, how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our town? So we'll start with those.
So my priority with the budget would be first and foremost to look and review last year's budget to see.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Eric, you need to start that timer again.
Thank you, John.
Yep, sorry about that.
I would look to review and see where there might be some extra funds that can be reallocated and moved. I would also want to ask questions and talk to the departments that need funding, and get more information. I know personally, when I work on my budget, I have all kinds of facts and figures and things laid out in front of me to calculate where, where I might have overspent or where I didn't spend enough and where I could move money to cover different things. And then an open dialogue is always a good approach. And I know that it would need to be discussed with everybody, and as Lannie did say, that majority does rule, so you would have to go over everything with everybody. But I just use old-fashioned methods of crunching numbers.
Thank you. And your second question, how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our town?
I think some more transparency needs to be in that, and I stop people and have conversations with people in grocery stores, and I ask them, I just go with I am old school, and I just do everything the old ways, where, and I'll shake your hand, and I think more being out in the public is always a good thing. And I serve currently on the Windsor County Board of Realtors, and whenever we have an event, all the board, it's actually a requirement that all the board members are present so that if there are issues that come up, we are there to address them, or we are there to answer questions. So I think being more visual and being available is a good way to get the townsfolk involved.
Thank you. And this time I'm going to start with Mike to see if he has a question. Sorry, Mike. I'm trying to give it so everybody has a chance, because it doesn't always fall on Ashley.
Thank you.
I think I'll ask the same question I asked Lannie, which is, could you identify for us what you consider to be the 3 biggest issues now facing our?
I would have to agree that the homelessness is an issue. Even on my way here today, I saw tarps up on the corner, and that's the first time I've seen the pictures that people post online. I've seen that, but today was the first time I've actually seen it myself with my own 2 eyes. I also work at the Hartford High School, and I'm out in the community a lot with my students, and it's kind of, we have to be a little extra vigilant when we're out there with them, because you don't know what you're going to see on the street. We've seen syringes, there's been trash left, especially at the AT stops. That is a big issue. I don't necessarily think I think if you build something and to house them, that's going to not help them get back up on their feet. I think that they need some resources to be able to get back up on their feet. I think that if you're given that and you're able to overcome it, it's going to give you a better feeling and give you more confidence to be able to go out and do something. Just giving them a place to live isn't going to necessarily solve the problem. Yes, it's going to get them off the street, but it's not going to solve the problem, and it's not going to teach them to be self-sufficient, and to get a job and to get the help that they need. I think we need more resources in that area. And I think some of the folks I've talked to, and I know it was a bitter subject, but some of the folks I've talked to think that the recycling being taken away is an issue. And I think that needs to be readdressed, and maybe a conversation needs to be had with Casella again and see if they would be willing to work with the town.
Did you have a third one?
It went right out of the top of my head.
Sorry.
I did have it, and it just disappeared. Oh my goodness, it did. It totally disappeared. I apologize, Mike. I can't
No,
think of the
that's
third
okay.
one.
Yeah.
So I mean, you mentioned a couple things, I think, that were not only, like you mentioned, homelessness, but sort of the public order, right? Like things, syringes, things like that, that upset people. So I think that's another thing, and then the recycling as well. So I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Sure. Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming and for applying. I'm just curious if you could share a bit more about what made you decide to, 1, get involved in town government, and 2, apply for the select board specifically.
I've always had an interest in politics. And when I saw the opening come up, I said, well, maybe that's a sign, maybe it's time. And so I thought I would throw my hat in the ring and give it a try. And the nice thing is that I understand that this is until town meeting, and it then gives me an opportunity to get my feet wet. And if I then choose, I would love to run and hopefully get another seat on the board come March.
Thank you.
Miranda?
Yeah, just looking at or thinking about some of the top issues or like priorities that you have for Hartford, do you have any ideas or like initiatives that you would really want to tackle as a board member?
I think an initiative that maybe we would be good to tackle is getting out in the public and being more visual and working with the townsfolk and not letting them, some people may be intimidated by the board and may not quite fully understand, and maybe getting out there and being in the public eye and working with the public and not trying to not work with them, I guess would be a good way to put it. Thank you.
Eric?
I have no questions at this time.
Okay, Ashley?
Sure, I have a question. You mentioned that you work at the high school, was that high school?
I work at the high school, yes.
School, and that you're also pretty involved in the community. And I'm always intrigued by what connections people bring with them to the board and what perspectives people bring. So I was just curious on like a more personal level, like, are there any groups that you're involved with or like interests that you have? Like, are you part of a local book club or like, is there anything like that that you really enjoy in the community that you're kind of connected with?
I'm not, I do some stuff in the community as far as what the school goes, because I'm usually always there. I have a teenage daughter and she's very involved in volleyball. So I work with the volleyball team. I'm one of their biggest cheerleaders. And I help with organizing the team dinners, organizing their snack bags for the buses, and just keeping, being all around moral support for everybody.
Awesome, that's very cool. Thanks. It's good to get to know you in that way
Yeah.
and know that kind of community that you're a part of. So.
Yeah.
And my question goes back to the same one that I asked Lannie, but maybe I will phrase it just a little bit differently. As you know, select boards are individuals, and you're in a field that you have to work cooperatively with people. Convince me of how you would do that in a select board setting.
Well, I actually hold two jobs. I do work at the school. I also own my own real estate company and I'm a real estate broker in town. And so that alone, you have to learn a lot of people skills and you have to be cooperative, but yet you have to know where the line is to guide and gently direct people into the right home. Because especially if you're dealing with a first time home buyer, they just are so overwhelmed and don't know what is what, and you need to just kind of gently nudge and guide. And then working with high school students, well, that's fun. No, I love it. It is the best job I've ever had. The students are amazing, but you have to know when to speak up and know when not to, and you have to, there's quite the balance with that. And I've often been told by my peers and my coworkers that I can balance that very well, and I know when to and when not to nudge.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so there's a little bit of time left. Do you know how much?
You can read it better than I can, probably.
It says it has 5 minutes.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Otherwise,
The only other thing I can think of is what I don't necessarily know about politics, I will make up for in enthusiasm. I am always willing to learn, and I'm always willing to listen. And listening, I always find is key.
right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Since we don't have Michael Eigenbro, Tim, you are up.
I feel like that that test needs to go back a little bit farther.
Does it
Still.
need to- I
Sorry
didn't look
to-
this time.
To
Well, yeah, I wonder if Tim just sat in the
We've lost-
chair behind.
We've
him.
lost our jam person, so I can't manipulate the.
Isn't it good I'm not getting camera coverage?
Just scooch back like 3 feet
Ow.
back.
It looks,
Budget IT.
it's not looking, I don't know if it can.
See, at least we
Oh,
can,
it's-
now we can at least see them.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
If someone sees the, sorry.
Yeah, I think it detects motion, so maybe
I
Tim's
have
gonna move.
We couldn't hear it very well and now all of a sudden we can. So
He's quite clear now.
Okay,
Oh,
I can see him.
all right.
oh, yep, there.
Oh, there.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, so we'll start with those two questions again. What would your priorities be in this fall's budget process? And the second one, how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our town?
Well, thank you for having me this evening. As you know, I've been pretty involved with the town and the school for a while. And I'm kind of excited if I get the opportunity to work with you guys. I want to kind of start with a statement that I sort of have felt more and more as I've gotten older, and that is to say that nobody has all the answers. I think we wrestle with the world together. And I've really kind of come to terms with that in the sense that, you know, you have to kind of bang out, you know, what's going on in the world and listen to other people's views and come up with some good decisions. So as it relates to the budget, I think, you know, as you know, the process has typically been listening to each department's needs and wants, and then identifying large expenses in the town that we will face in perhaps a 2 to 3 year snapshot, and then try and come up with some funding strategies. Every year is different. I mean, you guys have had funding challenges related to revenue. We've had ARPA money coming in. We've had LOT now emerging. So every year is a little different. But prior to this, I reviewed the entire budget actuals for 2024 and the 2025 budget. And we're sitting at around 22 million. And it's really interesting to me to kind of look at that, you know, piece by piece and say, you know, it's a challenge to do this budget, because for the most part, everything that's in there, I think belongs in there. I think our community needs it. And I think we probably have more needs that aren't on there. When I ran on the school board, the challenges are very similar to the town. That is to say that it's a people business. Staff costs money in terms of benefits and compensation. And on a year-to-year basis, you know, you're inevitably going to have a situation where if you want to get to what we call a zero budget, you would have to cut, because there are sort of built-in natural increases that come with every budget cycle. So I think it's a challenge on how to get through this budget process on a year-to-year basis. But I would seek, for me personally, to understand a little better the current reserve funding, kind of where we sort of sit with that part of our work. Bonding in the town of Hartford, which we've talked about before, and that kind of is the level of bonding suitable for some of our upcoming needs. And also, you know, a sensible approach to the unassigned funds that seem to come up every year. It's sort of like this, you know, number, and it's like, well, how much should we take of that and slide it over and, you know, cover our nut kind of thing. So, you know, I think we face a significant challenge in finding the balance between operating the town and the economic stress our citizens are facing. I think we may see several years of lean budgets and reduction of services. And that's just sort of my crystal ball thing of you know, what I'm hearing out there and what I think we may face in terms of where funding is coming from. I hope that's not the case and we can continue along, but it may very well be the case. So that's sort of my sense of that universe. On the plan to involve residents in the decision-making process, you know, I've come up to that stand quite a few times on that with you guys. I think the town needs to look forward to try and identify the key issues the town is facing and present them for dialogue in a few different channels. At a minimum, select board should hold listening sessions in each village setting in a pleasant venue at least one time a year before budgets are settled. These sessions could be a blend of specific topics with a facilitator or a more open session with no goal or agenda in mind. When we did this for the town manager search, it really generated goodwill and an opportunity to strengthen relationships for common purposes. Same thing in the superintendent search. When we listened to the community, we went around, we did a lot of kind of each candidate went classroom to classroom and people got to ask them questions. It really builds a lot of goodwill. And I really think that, yes, it's fine to be here, obviously easier to be here. But I think there's something to be said for going to each village, be it the library or whatever venue is appropriate, and doing that. And I do see you're doing that at Queechee, and I think that's awesome. I think it's a really great first step. Recently, pardon
In
me?
White River Junction in October.
Yeah, cool. Although you're already here, sort of. Recently, I watched a program related to Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is a community anticipating significant growth, and many residents worried of losing their sense of community life. They used a Google tool called Jigsaw, which consolidates a range of data and input points, surveys, to understand the issues and the views of the community on key topics. This provides a roadmap or a template to help them migrate through this. So I really do think there's a lot of pretty innovative instruments out there for getting a pulse on something. Obviously, you guys know the famous curbside recycling challenge. I think we probably could have learned a lesson there of getting a survey out ahead of that to ask residents, hey, we're presented with this significant number from Casella. What do you think? And you would have gotten a feedback that might have said, yeah, you're right, it's too much money, or no, I'm willing to eat that money because I think it's a good program. So, there are tools that I think that would be wise to use, certainly in big decision making, to get that pulse so that you can make good decisions as a board. So that's about it for that. Back to the budget thing, I did do a little analysis that I thought was kind of interesting. And as you know, the CLA thing, which I greatly appreciate, we've gotten that done. And the reason being is that if you looked at the last budget cycle of the school, which as we know, it's a common tax bill, if we had had our CLA at 100% last year, the money that we would have saved on the rate on the school side would have paid for the town budget. So that's kind of a profound analysis of when you think about it, that's why I had emphasized in my application this idea of the school and the town really staying connected and in touch with each other, because it's the same purse, as we know. And I think that we have these opportunities to be creative with where we're spending money and where money's coming from to get through these challenges. So thank you.
Thank you. Miranda, do you have a question for Tim? Okay. Eric?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for putting your hat in the ring, Tim. In your application, you mentioned researching exceptionally well-run communities, identifying practices that could work here. That can be really broad. Where would you start?
Well, I'll give you one great example, Montpelier. So again, I appreciate all the efforts that every department makes here to run their departments respectively, but I was really intrigued by in Montpelier, if you go to their website and you go to the public works area, they actually have a GIS map of every improvement project on a map that any resident can look at. And it identifies this is the year that we're going to repave this road. This is the year we're going to replace the water mains or whatever. And I think those types of sort of communication instruments, by looking at what town is doing this the best in any sector. And I'm not saying we probably have examples of that we are the best, right? But I think it's always an opportunity to kind of look at that. And as you know, I've done quite a bit of analysis of other towns, grand list, tax rates, and so on, because I think you always want to keep an eye on your peers of well, how are they doing that? Case in point, 41% of our budget is police and fire. And I have no perspective on that, on whether that's good, bad, too much, too little. And it's no reflection on either department, but I think it's telling that 41% of our budget is tied up in those two departments. And we should perhaps reflect on our peers and say, well, what's different about Hartford? Why is that? And what are the opportunities that we could tweak that one way or the other?
Thank you.
Ashley, you have a question for Tim?
I don't think I do.
Thank you. I have a question. We hear this a lot, affordability. It's a word that has existed actually as a descriptor for many residents in many towns, not just in these current times. If affordability is not only about cuts to town budgets, i.e. through taxes, what creative ways can residents, business owners, as well as boards look for solutions?
Well, there's always been this theory in New England of sort of community pitching in for free kind of thing, volunteering and so on. I mean, it's funny for me because I grew up in Brownsville, West Windsor, if you guys know where that is. And then I spent 10 years in Heartland, Vermont. And then I came to Hartford. And honestly, every town was very, very different in terms of the participation level of the citizens, how the town ran their expenses and their government and so on. So I think you just have to kind of like step back. And when I looked at the budget and I was reviewing, okay, well, what do we spend money on? Even something, I know the cemeteries, which is a tiny number, but it's like, well, what do other towns do with their cemeteries? How do they maintain them, or do they contract it out or whatever? And so just doing a little bit of that reflection of sort of how we operate, what we do, and what we might tweak. I think it's a huge challenge, but I've also, I'm a huge advocate for the economic development side, because at the end of the day, if we can keep, a really vitality in our community, it's going to really take a lot of pressure off on the revenue side, truthfully, as we know. So.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Mike, you have a question for Tim?
Yeah, well, I've asked it twice already, so let's do it thrice. Please identify what you consider to be the three biggest issues facing Hartford.
I think it's hard to sort of separate them into separate things. I mean, a lot of people have talked about this housing issue, and I'm not as gung-ho on that being a challenge for Hartford, to be honest with you. If you really look at the housing that Hartford has built in the last 10 or 15 years, it's profound. I'd like to see the numbers. Combination of what Twin Pines has done, private developers, and so on. So I think that, I also don't necessarily think that more volume of housing is going to address the issues that we think it is in terms of like affordability. The theory would be right that you would add to the supply and it would drive down rent prices or cost. And I don't think that's the case. I think that, with any kind of growth, there comes other costs and other issues, and the market's still very pressurized in terms of like the number of people who will come here and buy a $500,000 home without a blink, that kind of thing. So in terms of the three items that Hartford faces, I think it's probably scale of what the town does for its citizens relative to the cost. I think our school thing, which I know is not a town issue, but I think it's a huge issue for me, is obviously with this emergence of these PCBs and other challenges with the buildings. That's a big one for us right now. And then, honestly, as we've talked about and obviously seen in our community, the economic wage gap. I worked at Listen for over 4 years and saw incredible poverty. And I also saw incredible wealth. And so I think that as a community, we're going to have to somehow come to terms with this real challenge in our community between people that really struggle check to check and people that are very, very wealthy, and how we work together and hopefully make a better community.
Ida?
How much time is left, Tim? Would you mind?
I have 3 hours.
Oh.
2:40.
2 hours, 2 minutes and 38 seconds.
Okay, well, since you brought up time, I appreciate the voice you've run to the select board as a resident and some of the critiques that you have of how we operate as select board. I think one, sort of thing that we all weigh and that you've brought up both sides of is how to have shorter select board meetings and an appropriate level of public engagement. So do you have thoughts on how you would balance those two needs as a board?
Yes, because not to sound selfish, but I would love it if we got it under 2 hours, but it might be a pipe dream. 3 hours, under 3 hours. Looking at the agendas, honestly, and trying to get a sense of that and time management and what you can do, and you've tried to do some of it already, which is great. There's about 60-70% of the agenda items that, truth be told, are probably click-throughs. They're probably items that most town people don't really care that you're going to vote yay or nay, and usually vote yay. And maybe I'm making a false assumption there, but it's kind of like when you, for example, get your liquor control stuff and it comes through, and it's honestly done more efficiently than it has then. That is to say, hey, we got 5 applications, boom, boom, boom. Yup, looks good, go. I think there's a decent number of items on the agenda that could be like a end of the meeting click through, say, yep, we've seen that, seen that, seen that. They all look good. Anybody have any issues? Nope, good. So you could sort of compress some of those agenda items into sort of a click through format to the extent possible. I think that would help a lot. And then again, with the community outreach, the theory is you depressurize the vessel. So people aren't coming in here wanting to go over their 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, because they've had the opportunity to discuss something that matters to them in a nice listening session.
You've got whatever seconds are
I
left.
cede my 33 seconds.
Or you can say.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Tim.
Okay. And we are ready for John Haffner.
How am I framed?
Looking good.
Perfect.
Sound
And I
good?
think Eric's seat set up for that time. You're on. Again, let's start with, let's start with you telling us where your residence is, then we know some of the other people, and then we can do the 2 questions first.
Sure. John Haffner. I am a resident of the village of White River Junction, live up near the high school, go Hurricanes. Yeah.
And then we'll go to those questions. What would your priorities be in this fall's budget process? And the second one, how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our
Sure.
town?
So yeah, thanks for these questions. I think that they're great questions, and I think I would start by answering the first one around the budget process with, I think, being honest that I wouldn't want to make any assumptions about how this process operates, and even though I might be familiar and have observed the town budgeting process in the past, every budget is different. So I think I would start with, I think, a level of humility in wanting to gauge in a deliberative process with the board and with town staff. That being said, I think I would start with a pretty strong, I think, value in staff retention. I think that there's public employees, I think, like all of us, have been pinched in a lot of different ways due to the rising costs, rising inflation, and while it's down, it's still tough. And so I think the ability to keep up with those inflationary pressures and to support staff to be able to stay here and to also plan for, I think, transitions in staffing turnover and successions and things like that due to retirements and likewise. So while I know that is maybe a aspiration of everybody, I think I would take it very seriously. And I think Eric had mentioned something in a previous meeting about using constraints to look for creative solutions. And I think that would be a way to, sort of temper that rose-tinted spectacles look of just let's do whatever we can to preserve staff. But I think, limiting cuts so that we can figure out how to both retain the staff that we have now and focus on sort of future support and capacity in the town. I think that's a much better approach than I think just having a knee-jerk reaction to austerity as we're sort of faced with some of these pressures. Beyond retaining staff, I think the area that we should focus on the most, if possible, within the budget is to add capacity to facilities management. John had mentioned in the previous meeting about facilities manager being an area to look at. And I think with some of the struggles within aging infrastructure and the public facilities that we have right now, it would do a lot for setting up long-term planning if there is somebody in that position to really look into some of the corrective measures that might need to take place. I know the school has had to do that, is continuing to do that, and we have a lot of other public buildings within our community that I think would benefit from having some expertise in that level. So I think that would be an area that I would prioritize for adding capacity to the town. Second question on
That's
community.
how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process?
Right. So in my professional capacity, I work in planning, and community engagement has been an area that's been incredibly challenging in contemporary planning. Just the traditional mechanisms for engagement and outreach haven't been working. Survey uptake hasn't been as high as in the past. I think it's really hard to measure things based on social media discourse. I think just conversations in general tend to get really fraught and heated. So I think I appreciate that that's an area that's really difficult. So for the town, I would start with where I think things are working. And even though it's not perfect, I do think that the committee structure is a really great way of engaging residents, both residents who have been here a long time, and I think residents that are relatively newer. I've lived in town for only 3 years, and shortly after I arrived, I got involved in the housing committee. And that was just a great way to, I think, start to not only contribute to the conversation, the issues facing the town, but also to then connect with other residents, other community members, neighbors that I have just on issues that are important to them, and represent those issues within town conversations. So I would want to, I think, encourage more active participation in committees, and then maybe committees ourselves. We could do a little bit more cross collaboration so that we can share these different perspectives and offer, I think, a representational view of who we as individuals are talking to within our community. I also think that the town meeting cycle is something that works really well to just further engage people. And these are all the kind of the traditional ways of town engagement. So I know that they're not perfect, but I think, again, it's something that has worked really well. And so I would just want us to stay focused on that. I think to kind of innovate a little bit more would be to focus on outreach in public and third spaces. So, I think like the Bugby Senior Center is a great place for hosting events and for engaging with constituents there. The HCC block party is something that's always, I think, well attended and a great place to do outreach and engagement. So working with libraries, getting, hosting events in different parks and other public spaces. And I think what you all are planning on doing with reaching out and specifically hosting conversations in different areas of town, I think would fit into that as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to the select board questions. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for throwing your hat into the ring, John. In your application, you identify that, quote, long-range planning and housing and economic development is one, end quote, is one of the solutions to broader problems of affordability. What are some of the strategic goals and action items in the draft town plan chapters for housing and economic development that you strongly support?
One thing that I think I don't know how much of this is long-range planning in particular, but I think something that is actually a bit of a low-hanging fruit that could be engaged with is the draft housing master plan is looking at changes to parking ordinances. And I think that those are the kinds of changes that we kind of have to wrestle with and discuss, because if you're looking at it in the long term, while there might be an immediate need or immediate reaction to wanting to increase the availability of parking, I think from a long-term perspective, that is only ever going to become a drain on the town when it comes to revenue perspectives. So looking at how a town can think about future land use from a revenue standpoint, and how do you utilize that land use to fulfill the needs and uses of the community, then also generate future incomes that can help support ongoing maintenance of critical infrastructures. So similar to that, I think I would look at things like walkability, connectedness, things that utilize our land use for things that bring people together, increase economic activity, provide critical needs like housing, and how those can sort of generate further revenues for the town.
Thank you.
Okay, Ashley, do you have a question?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, John. Thanks for being here. Thanks for applying. I was curious. So I appreciate that you said you would address our budget cycle with some humility and figuring out how it's been approached traditionally and how we do it. And as you know, many of us are new to the process, or at least 3 of us are new to the process. So my question is, do you have any experience with municipal budgets or operational budgets. I guess I'm curious about, yeah, your experience with not only like an operating budget, but also like capital improvement planning and like having an understanding of the different kind of revenue sources that are coming in, which are all things that I'm still learning. So yeah, just what understanding you might be bringing
Right.
with you.
So I don't have experience in municipal budgeting other than as a bystander or a fan generally, but organizational budgeting, yes, and through different places that I've worked with, and I think that one thing that I've learned from that process, and that I think is relevant to municipal budgeting, is again not just thinking about when things are tight, not to just respond blindly with austerity measures. I think that there always has to be creative thinking around, and not just I think naive optimism, but I think a hope and an intention of securing revenue. So I think similar to Tim, I have questions or thoughts and interests around the level of bonding that Hartford has. I think that the Vermont Bond Bank is something that is an incredible resource. I don't necessarily know if I feel confident in what the appropriate level of bonding is, but I think that that is a tool that municipalities have at their disposal for things like long range planning and investments.
Thank you.
Yes, John, 3 issues facing Hartford right now.
Oh, surprise curveball there. So I do think, that Mary references that affordability is, I think, just an issue that's forefront for many people. And I would break down affordability into my first 2 areas facing Hartford. The one is housing affordability. And then the second would be healthcare. And I mentioned this in my application, and I don't know to what extent the town can play a role in reducing healthcare costs, but both housing and healthcare are the 1 and 2 most expensive things that are facing residents here. And so what kind of collaboration can the town of Hartford do with the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns to work with the state and work with regulators to reduce healthcare costs, I think would be important for residents. And from a housing perspective, actually agree that the town needs to do some direct investment into housing in particular. And I look to other communities in the Upper Valley that are taking advantage of municipally owned land, operating as project managers and general contractors within the efforts to actually build housing for residents. And I would say in particular, the missing middle housing, homeownership opportunities for people to be able to stay here and settle down roots. This, for me, has turned into my forever home for me and my family. And I think that more people should be able to have access to that reality, both people who grew up here and people who are arriving here from elsewhere. So housing, healthcare, and then I would say town infrastructure, and not just the physical infrastructure, but I think the social infrastructure as well would be important components of that.
Great, thank you.
How are we on time?
3 minutes.
A couple minutes?
I'll make it quick.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I think just simply, well, thank you, John. Great to have you in here. I know that you already dedicate time and effort to your work as a committee chair, just on a sort of personal level and or a town level. What made you want to take a step further in your involvement and throw your hat in the ring for select board membership?
I think local government is just great. I think that there's a lot of frustrations and challenges with civil society in general, social fabric eroding, yada, yada, yada. But I feel as though local government is a place where some of these repairs that we need to see happen within our broader community and social life can take root. So and whether or not it's now, or I think at some point in the future, I'll always be engaged in town government. And I think this is sort of an opportunity to start sort of taking that a bit further.
Great, thank you.
Miranda?
Yeah, John, you and I have lived here for similar amounts of time, and I just want to know what do you love about Hartford? I feel like it's, moving to a small town can be challenging coming from a city. And yeah, what makes you stay?
I do think that people here give you a reason to stay. Like, even if you came here for other reasons, arriving and connecting and building community here is one of the reasons why I think the town is great. So I think that I love that component of it. I think the combination between sort of the urban forms in proximity to natural environment, I think is a really unique space. I think in many ways too, the bi-state nature of it, just the multiple jurisdictions that are aligned here, it's actually wild. I think that there's not a lot of places in the country that have this type of just political and geographic dynamic. So the uniqueness of it is also a perk that I really enjoy.
Thank you.
Garrett?
I've asked a question, haven't I?
Oh, you okay.
Yep.
I guess I'm the last one, but actually you just answered various parts of my colleagues. So if there's anything else you need to add while the timer's running out?
Yield my time.
Go Hurricanes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we are going to move into executive session. I'll take a motion from anyone on board.
This is two-parter.
Yes,
But I can just make one.
yes, that's right.
Madam Chair, I move to find that premature general public knowledge will clearly place this body or persons involved at a substantial disadvantage pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A1. And I move to discuss a personnel matter, including the future appointment of a resident to fill a select board vacancy pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A3.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Miranda seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So 6-0. So we will move into room 2.
What's the numbers you're gonna have?
8624. 8624. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yes, I thought you did too. Over the break, it's like Wednesday. Sounds like a lot of people in there.
Probably.
forever is a very difficult decision because there are a lot of good people here. A lot of good experiences and talents.
I move that we end the executive session of the select board at 7:33 PM.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 6.
Yes, so Madam Chair, I move that pursuant to section 203A(1)(e) of the Town of Hartford Charter, the Select Board appoint Tim Fariel to fill the Select Board vacancy and to serve through town meeting voting day on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026.
Second.
Second by Mike. All those in favor say aye.
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 This was not easy.
This was not easy.
decision.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
Do we want to say anything to all the applicants?
well, we want to encourage, as I said before in the beginning, we want to encourage people who showed up tonight, who applied tonight, to please feel comfortable, energized to run. There will be possibly 3 openings in March for select board. So we hope that you'll consider being a part of the town of Hartford Select Board.
Yes, please come back. We really appreciated all of you that you brought to this.
You know, it's not easy to put yourself out there in this format. So yeah, really appreciate it and encourage you to be involved in the town in any ways and hopefully consider running in the future.
All right, thank you. And so we then move on to the select board. Continued discussion, planning of public engagement event.
Yeah, at the last meeting, Madam Chair, there was some desire to do a little bit of research about one of the ideas that came up at the last meeting, which is to have something a little bit more local to White River Junction for our next outreach, and something that might be a little more casual and approachable and encouraging public to come out and maybe in concert with a First Friday event in White River. So I have sent you some information I've received by a possible host at a venue in White River, and certainly open to discussion about how the select board feels about the proposal that is taking some rough shape so far. I won't be insulted if you go in a completely different direction, but I have pursued a little bit further what we discussed last time.
Anybody have any questions for John?
So I'll just, to make sure I didn't miss anything. So the updates that you had sent in regards that, yes, the filling station is open to letting us use the venue, that they're willing to do also a spread for like snacks and whatnot. And that, and that also they'd be willing to do some marketing for the event as well. Was there any other, and then the facilitation piece / agenda piece was still something that we were gonna decide, you know, but it was leaning towards being a looser, casual.
This would be First Friday, October.
October,
Yeah.
October 3rd.
that's right.
The casual idea. I was just remembering that Mike wasn't here, so.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I can imagine, if you wanted, we could do a table with some name tags or what have you. Maybe even bring a suggestion box or have an easel to put anybody's suggestions or ideas. Or it could be nothing more than just meet your select board members in a casual environment.
I had an idea around that because I do like the idea of it being a more casual event. But then I thought something that could be nice. I like the idea of the name tags, but like a board with like sticky notes or something like that. But maybe not with just like broad suggestions, maybe more specific of just like, what do you love about Hartford? Or like something just like positive, kind of like set the mood of like, yeah, a brighter tone.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's possible, because I did still want to speak to a local facilitator that I had mentioned who was part of, I think it was called Equity Solutions. And I have not been able to connect with her yet. So I wonder if I shoot her an email, try to connect with her, and then send an update to you, John, and the board to see if she has any advice to offer us that I can distribute.
Sure,
then we
I'm
can-
all ears. I'd be happy to see anything you've got. My only question would be, if this is First Friday and people are coming and going and buying drinks and what have you, is that the appropriate forum to have a facilitated
Yeah.
discussion, or would that get a little clunky in that kind of environment?
Well, I was thinking that she could recommend something along the, like, help steer us along the lines of what
Oh, I
Miranda's
see.
mentioning.
I
Yeah,
see.
where it's like knowing that it's this kind of rotating event.
Yeah.
What's maybe something that they, just from their experience and doing so many.
Mhm.
events.
Put a million little Post-its on a board, something.
Yeah.
Yes, I,
Yeah, just a few thoughts. I think one is just sort of like the name of the event. I think you sort of had select board meet and greet. We threw out there last time select board social, which is just a
Mhm.
little shorter and more
Mhm.
alliterative if other people like that. And it sort of reflects like, ice cream social that the schools might do. I don't know.
I like that.
And then one I thought, I do really like the idea of having name tags available, or just like ones that people can write a table with stickies that people can write their names on. I would like that. And then some type of, like piece of paper that people can put small stickies on. I like, sort of having a positive slant to it. I mean, I think one, since we're going to be in downtown White River Junction on First Friday, I mean, one question or prompt could be like what makes a vibrant downtown White River Junction? Just trying to think of framing it in a way that people can sort of say what they like, but also, ideas for what doesn't currently exist, but what makes a vibrant downtown.
Generative.
Yeah. And then I have one other thought. Okay, I lost it, but yeah, those are my thoughts. So the name, yes to name tags, and maybe a prompt around what makes a vibrant downtown.
And do we like the time frame, roughly 90 minutes at the beginning of first Friday evening?
Yeah, so that would be starting what?
5:30 to
Starting at
7 was just
5:30?
a suggestion, but
Yeah.
I think it goes pretty much about that time to get started without eating into their main business, which will probably be later into the evening with live music and all that.
Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate the idea. I think one of the candidates, maybe it was Tim, used the phrase depressurize the vessel or something like that, just
Mhm.
giving people an opportunity to engage with their select board members and use that as a venue and a way of maybe getting the conversation out of the online venues and into the in-person, where we're perhaps hopefully more civil. So I recognize that in as one objective. And then there's this idea of soliciting input on some topic or whatever. And I think what we ought to do is go through and understand what we might do with that after the fact. Because nothing is worse, at least from my perspective, of contributing ideas, putting things on a board or whatever, or sticky notes on whatever you vote the most for, and then having nothing come of it. So we just need to be mindful of setting the expectations and then being able to follow through on them. Or, sort of changing that and just being like, it's just a social, right? Like, so I'm not opposed to the idea of soliciting feedback. We should probably articulate what we're going to do with it. And like how we might, and we might not know specifically because we might not know what it is, but like at least have a general plan for how to deal with information that we get.
I would just say meet and greet at the bar. I'm 100%.
Yeah.
The other side of the select board, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I was also hoping, Eric, that the person I was going to talk to would have an insight on that, like from a kind of like, I don't know what the right word would be, like a building, a trust building exercise, and like organizational, like trust specifically building. component, like what could maybe be something valuable that might not be in our mind right now of like, yeah, this is an exercise that could really, achieve what you, like not just coming and putting up a bunch of ideas that we're not gonna do anything with. I also want to really avoid that. So yeah, maybe she'll have some ideas on how to guide us.
When is our deadline for sort of finalizing the?
Well, I'd say when you're dealing with a business owner who's trying to make their business work, I'm sure the sooner the better would be good for us to lock in a time and a date and a budget.
Which we can
Right,
lock all
but
that
We can
in.
lock that.
Yeah.
Right, so we can lock those things in. It's just the balance of the sort of the more nuanced details. We could discuss that at a future meeting and
Sure.
still,
Yeah.
I forget, October 2nd is what we're talking about.
October 3rd, I think, is the Friday.
Mhm.
And I think you've got September 2, September 16th, September 30th.
Okay.
John, is there a problem at all with, a social meet and greet? Would people think that even though we have the funds available, this isn't a very good use of funds?
I'm sure that's up to you. I think,
I'm not against it.
yeah,
I'm
I
just
think
saying
I think if the only expense you're incurring is to provide the food to feed the public,
Right,
that I don't see where the complaint would
Okay.
come. In fact, if it was money to feed only the select board, I could see that being an
Right.
outrage. But I'm hoping that people will understand that we want to have the public comfortable enough to approach their select board, and for a nominal amount, we can feed them.
okay, just wanted to make sure.
BYO or buy your own is the
Right.
policy though,
Right.
for adult beverages.
So do we need to
Make a
make a
motion?
motion to accept these dates and place?
I guess it wouldn't hurt.
All right,
I'm happy to work on consensus, but
Okay.
motion's good. Motion's
Okay.
good.
I'll take a motion.
Could I ask a question
Yes,
first? Do we
Ashley.
need to choose a title for the event right now? Or do we want to wait and have that relate to our agenda or?
I think you can advertise it once we've developed what we think it's gonna be a little bit more,
Yeah.
still make it more effective, but we can probably just all agree that we wanna have it first Friday.
Yeah.
At the filling station and ask John to make arrangements necessary
Yeah.
to start facilitating that.
And then we can talk about it on the 2nd or the 16th.
Okay.
Finalize it.
So moved.
Okay, Miranda?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering for like advertisement purposes, like, would it be best if, tonight we say, this is the time, this is the date, confirm it with the filling station so that they're set.
Mhm.
And then perhaps at the next meeting, if it's possible, actually to like make a decision
Yep.
so that we can decide on a name and start putting it out there and do like,
Good. I think we can squeeze that into the agenda. We've been talking among ourselves about how light the next agenda is looking. So yes,
Hey,
happy to put something in there.
Oh, don't say that. We're setting the
Yeah,
agenda
be careful what you
tomorrow.
wish for, right?
And I'm also like totally happy to say that if I don't have any more information by the next meeting, like I'm happy for us to just, make a decision amongst ourselves, but I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really important point, and I do like point taken that, like, just having a conversation about like, oh, tell us what would make downtown vibrant. I could see that happening, and then it in the moment being a nice place to generate the trust building, but the importance of action to come out of community engagement, unless we're clear that it's just for socializing and
Right.
sort of. So I don't know. I can't off the top of my head think of a prompt that we could then like apply to our budget process, which is sort of the reality of like
Give
our
everyone
next
a
big
little mock
task.
budget.
Yeah, like right, like
Yeah, bring your pencils.
what's your favorite line of the budget? Outside input welcome on that.
Okay,
So you ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion. Are you ready?
I'm gonna wing it.
All right, go for it.
So I'll move that the select board direct the town manager to organize a select board public engagement event for the first Friday in October to be held at the filling station at roughly 5:30 to 7 p.m. Details to follow.
Second.
Second by Mike. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we are moved on to public comment.
Good evening. My name is Kim Souza and I live in Hartford, Vermont. And I appreciate you all so much right now. I really haven't been as engaged as I'd like to be, but that's all going to change. Also big shout out to all the new planters in downtown White River Junction. Really, it just brings me joy every time I walk through downtown. So kudos to all of the staff and the town manager. I have my purpose for public comment is not relating to the excellent choice you all made this evening for your appointment to the select board. I have one question and one kind of comment / request relating to the fair and impartial policing status. So I'm curious if, and if this can't be answered tonight, that's fine, but what are the next steps in the process to reconcile the fair and impartial policing situation?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Again, generally, we're trying to get away from public questions rather than public
Which-
comments.
So I can
but
take it another time.
Respecting that, given that we're almost at the end of our agenda, I can report that, as you know, since I shared it with you and the rest of the board, the legal counsel to the Vermont Criminal Justice Council has rejected most of the town's proposed methods by which to bring our current fair and impartial policing policy into better alignment with the town's welcoming Hartford ordinance. And of course, that's very discouraging. The leadership team or the working group team consisting of myself, the chair, the vice chair, chief of police, and our town attorney had a brief discussion, and the consensus was that we would go back to the legal counsel at the VCJC and see what areas that they didn't outright reject could be salvaged with some wordsmithing. So I think the next step would be, and Mike and Mary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is to generate a relatively short response, again, stating our disappointment with their position and articulating proposals to salvage the couple of areas where there seemed to be some wiggle room for possible compromise.
Thank you. I'm mindful of the amount of time you just took away from my public comment, not took away, but
Oh,
added
yeah.
to it.
Sorry. I'm sorry for answering your question.
No, I no, but so suddenly I only have 30 seconds. I would love the select board and the town manager to consider the possibility of reaching out to ACLU Vermont to consider a request for representation to potentially, I think, so happy to discuss further the backstory, and now I've only got 4 seconds. I think it's time to test the legal ramifications of the not only the requirements for compliance in the model FIP policy that the state is insisting on is based on US 1373 and 1644, which in multiple other federal jurisdictions has been ruled as unconstitutional. It has not yet been ruled unconstitutional in the Second Circuit Court, which would apply to Vermont. But this is a test. This is testing it. So this is the state saying that our police officers can't train in the academy because we are not compliant with their state policy. But their state policy is not only insisting on compliance with federal statutes that have been ruled unconstitutional in other jurisdictions, but also it's in conflict with the state's 2019 Act 41, which is that statute that says that towns can add additional restrictions to their fair and impartial policing. So I think it is time to next level this, and the going back and forth, they just keep saying no, and we have our welcoming Hartford ordinance. We have a constitutional crisis in our federal administration in which this stuff is real now. Like, this isn't just hypothetical situations. These are, you know, members of our community that should not have to fear for that their community, local law enforcement can be forced to share immigration and citizenship status. So I'm basically here to implore you to take the next steps, and I would happily share any of the background information that I have and or the resources. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Kim. Okay. Is there anybody online? So I will move on to select board comments and announcements. I'll start with Ashley.
I do not have any at this time.
Okay, Mike,
No comment.
Ida,
No comments.
No comments.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
okay, but Mike and I and John attended the station number 2 ribbon cutting and opening of their of the fire station, and it was a lovely day, good turnout, and
Nice ribbon cutting scissors.
oh yeah.
I've got a much bigger set upstairs. If only they had asked me.
So, you know, I've been thinking about, Chief Cooney saying, how thankful he was, and Kim, you were a part of that too, of all that we did in order to make this possible, and how we are putting money into places of safety where our people are the ones that benefit from an ambulance, a fire engine, truck, whatever you call them these days, in order to help our people with at least 5 minutes of cutting off for safety's sake. So proud to be a part of that. And I'll take a motion for adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
second by Eric. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we are adjourned.